Well, good afternoon and welcome to the principal's office. I am Principal Edward Gordon. I am so glad you have tuned in for this weekly broadcast where we will be interviewing educational stakeholders who have made a significant impact for themselves, for others, and with others in education. In the book, The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth, written by Dr. John C. Maxwell, he talks about the law of modeling. The law of modeling states it's hard to improve when you have no one but yourself to follow. A good mentor is a worthy example, available, has proven experience, possesses wisdom, provides friendship, provides support, and makes a difference in people's lives. We believe there are many outstanding leaders in this world, and weekly we want to highlight those leaders, leaders that help us provide models of excellence for others. Today, I am grateful to have another guest who is making a significant impact in her school and community, Mrs. Mallory DeMarco. Good afternoon, Mallory.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad that you are willing to come on the show today and share your story. So, as we get started, I would like to start off with a brief introduction of our guest today. Ms. Mallory DeMarco is married to Eric and a proud owner of her beloved Labrador Retriever, Mix Brady. She's a special education teacher at West Orange High School, West Orange, New Jersey. When Mallory is not teaching high school students on the autism spectrum, you can find her practicing or teaching in local yoga studios around Essex and Hudson County, New Jersey. She is passionate about educating students with special needs and teaching yoga to children, teens, and adults. Help me welcome again to the show, Mrs. Mallory DeMarco. So good afternoon, Mallory, and I'm once again so glad that you're on the show. And I just want to start off with this quote. The author Robin Moore states, "Inside each of us is a natural born storyteller waiting to be released." Mallory, what is your story?
So I guess it started when I could walk and talk, and I always wanted to be a teacher. Since I was very little, my family would tell you teaching is what I always said I wanted to do. My brothers might argue I was not always the nicest teacher growing up, but I'd like to think I've evolved into a very compassionate teacher. So from a young age, like I said, I always wanted to be a teacher. I envisioned myself being an elementary school teacher. When I was in college, I was substituting in West Orange, and I had the opportunity to work in a preschool classroom for students on the autism spectrum. I had no idea what autism was. It was the first time I had ever heard of it, but I figured why not? Give it a shot. Little kids, they're so cute. And from that instant, I fell in love. That was in 2008, autism became my entire focus of my career. I returned back to school for my last semester, and I worked with in-home with clients. So I had an 8-year-old and a 17-year-old that I would take out into the community and do community skills with. And then when I came home, I reapplied and I became a paraprofessional. I started in preschool again, and then eventually moved to a first grade classroom for students on the spectrum. From there, I wanted to learn more, right? I was getting this one district, this one visual of how to educate students on the spectrum. So I took a risk and I went to a school in New York City that was a developmental individual relationships model of instruction, which is very different from what West Orange was offering at the time. And I loved it. It was just different. And I realized that there is no one size fits all teaching model when it comes to special needs students, really any student, but given my path, special needs students. So I was there for some time. And then I decided I was going to go back. My major was in psychology, and I went back for my master's in special education. And as I was doing that, I was substituting. I was very picky about the classes I worked in. I really only chose the classes with students with special needs. Once I graduated, I took a job in Bergen County as I waited for my dream job at West Orange High School to open up. So I was teaching first and second graders, again on the spectrum, self-contained class. And then I believe it was September 2014 the high school position opened up for students on the spectrum, and I jumped at the opportunity. So I've been there ever since. And since then, I've kind of taken a different approach. I've tried to, as you mentioned, I am a yoga instructor, and I've tried to incorporate as much mindfulness and meditation and movement into my day-to-day work with my students, and I'm seeing how much it's positively impacting them.
Very good. There's many things that I've learned just by hearing your story. And one thing, there's two things that really stick out. One is that once you're in this profession of education, really taking the time to learn from different districts and how they are educating and serving the students and populations, but also advancing yourself, not only just staying at just getting a bachelor's in education, but continuing your work to increase your knowledge in terms of getting the master's level and further studies. And also the whatever another thing that stood out is in terms of you had in your mind your dream job and also the district that you wanted to work in, and now you're here in West Orange and doing a phenomenal job for the students that continuously go through your classes. But just your message is just a word of inspiration. Like, be focused and have what your desires, and everything will come into place. But continue to work hard, and it will all come together. So, thank you very much for sharing your story and your journey with the audience. I want to ask you a question. What gets you excited every day? What wakes you up in the morning?
My students are honestly every day, because at night as a teacher, I'm sure you've experienced this as well. You lay in bed and you come up with all these great ideas for the next day. And to see those lessons and those light bulbs go off and your mission to come to life is really inspiring for me. So, you do all this work, but until you see your students like, oh, I get it, I understand, that's what's inspiring to me. My students are my number one inspiration, and they're my number one teachers too.
Yes. I know for adults, when we have our own aha moments and make the connection, is a exciting feeling for us, and for those in education, when you're able to help students experience that for themselves, it's just a great feeling. So I'm glad that it excites you every day and the work that you continuously do. So let's talk about what is your most recent book that you have read, and how is that book impacting your actions today?
So I'm one of those people that reads about 7 books at the same time, and I can't help it. Every time I say I'm going to read one, I end up with like 5 on my night table. So my most recent book that's impacted my teaching is, I'm still in the middle of it, but 10 Mindful Minutes by Goldie Hawn. And she had created a curriculum that I have been implementing in my class for probably the last 7 years, called the Mind Up curriculum. And it teaches the students how their brain works and why we react to certain things, and how we can kind of help calm ourselves when we're in that reactive state. The 10 Mindful Minutes is the adult companion to that curriculum. So I have just found it fascinating. She makes it very digestible, the information. And so I've been implementing and showing, there's visuals, there's like very clear visuals about where the amygdala is, the hippocampus, the prefrontal cortex, and it kind of helps the students understand what we're talking about. And she also includes like descriptions about your guard dog at your house. So I also see private clients, but one of my private clients I see, we took that description and I had him draw a picture. We both drew pictures of what our brain looks like in terms of our house, the guard dog, the wise owl, and the memories that we keep in our hippocampus. So I have just found that book to be inspiring as a teacher, but I recommend it to all of my friends that are parents, because I think it really gives us insight into how our brains are developing and why kids may do things. And as we enter into those teenage years, why our brain, we may not have the understanding of how the brain works, and therefore we can't get it under control or calm ourselves when we need to.
All right. Very good. That's a very interesting book that you're sharing with the audience. And for me, I'm going to have to get a copy of that and also read it to be able to help my son, who's also on the spectrum of autism. So let's talk about mentorship. Do you have a mentor or a coach in your life? And what has been one thing your mentor or coach has taught you and helped you develop that's impacted your career?
When I first started teaching in West Orange, we had a consultant from Montclair State who I had happened to have met when I was doing my master's program. I joined, it was an educational coalition with my supervisor. I would go with her to meetings, and I met this woman there, and she knew her stuff. She was very inspiring. She stood her ground, and I was like, I like this lady, like I could see myself being like her. When I started working in West Orange about 3 years later, she happened to be the consultant for the district. And she was working in the developmental models, like I had mentioned earlier. So as I said, I love learning about all different types of teaching styles. And she kind of took me under her wing. And to this day, we keep in touch. She doesn't consult with our district anymore, or at least in my class. But anytime I have a question, I can reach out to her, run ideas by her, and she's really helped me to think outside the box, continue to think outside the box, continue to question, and stick to your gut. When something doesn't feel right, don't just go with the flow. Ask questions, understand why, and if it's not feeling right, then keep going until you get the answers that you want. So she has definitely been a mentor to me, not in the official capacity, but as I began my career.
Very good. And what I heard when you were describing your mentor is about accessibility, someone that you can reach out to, send an email, phone call to be able to help you on your journey. And that's what I just want to encourage everyone in the audience. First of all, to definitely have a mentor and a coach in your life to help you move on your career path personally or professionally. But also the fact that when you're choosing a mentor, be intentional. Make sure that the mentor is accessible. Um, when you get into a situation, you need someone to talk to. You want to be able to reach out to them, and they're going to respond. So accessibility is really key when you're looking for it, and identifying a mentor is going to help you move to the next level. So let's talk a little bit more about this past year. We've been going through a pandemic, COVID-19. For you as a teacher, what have you done for yourself in terms of um, staying focused and also just being able to continuously come to work and also to support your students each and every day? What have you done for yourself?
I'd like to say I got really good at self-care, but unfortunately, I will say I did try to incorporate more of a meditation practice. That's been a goal of mine for years, and I definitely, with my students, have incorporated a meditation practice in my mornings. I do try and exercise in some way, shape, or form every day. Unfortunately and truthfully, I'm not really a big video workout person, so my yoga practice is kind of fallen at the wayside, truthfully. But I do try and do some restore yoga at the end of the day to kind of wind the day down. But I would say just movement. I'm really big on movement, and I'm at a point where my body's just like, you got to get up and go. You can't sit here any longer.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I've been trying to instill, I always say to my students, say what I do what I say, not as I do. So I'm like, do movement, get outside, do something that makes you happy. And so I've tried to instill that in them, and I'm still working on continuing that practice on my own. But taking pauses I'm usually a person that doesn't stop. From the minute I get up to the minute my head hits the pillow, I do not stop. Whether I'm at work, and then I have part-time work. And I was at one point before all this happened, I was a yoga studio owner, so I literally did not stop. And this year has given me a chance to pause. And I will say that in the midst of all this chaos, has been the greatest gift, is the time and ability to just stop and be like, you need to just close your eyes for 10 minutes, and then you can regroup and get back to it. So I would say my consistent practice this year has been learning how to pause.
Very good. And I want to say, don't be so hard on yourself. What you have definitely shared with the audience is the fact of move, do something, be active, okay? But yes, we're going to strive to be consistent and do it every day. But I'm glad to hear that you're doing something and you are aware in terms of what you need to do for yourself in terms of your own mental health during this time period. And I just love the fact that you continuously encourage your students and want them to be able to understand that movement, meditation, and also, this has been a challenging time for everyone, and we definitely have to take care of ourselves. When we think about the students that you serve, students that are on the spectrum of autism, being remote virtual learning has been a challenge. And what are some of the practices that you have been able to implement and even make some attempts to implement and just to do the best and during this situation to be able to support those students on the spectrum in the remote environment during this time period?
So I just want to note the students have been incredibly resilient, incredibly resilient. I was so worried going into this back in last March. And, in the last year, we've bounced back and forth. We were back in October and then we went remote and then, we were back and now we're remote again. And it amazes me their ability to just bounce back. And I've seen how they've grown and become more independent as they've been thrown into this. And one way that I've supported them is we meet every single day. I found that since day one, it was very, very important for my students to see my face and communicate and continue to practice those social skills we were working on daily in the classroom. So every single day we meet. And on Fridays, it's usually asynchronous. And I know some of my colleagues also meet on Fridays, but everyone else is like, we don't have to meet for our classes. And I'm like, well, you got to come see me. All right. It makes my day. So come see me. So meeting every day has been incredibly beneficial. Incorporating every class, even if it's a 5-minute mindful meditation, or we really have been doing like a visual meditation just to get them ready to work. And I always give them the option. Okay, what do you guys feel like doing today? And yesterday I gave them the option and they said we want to meditate first and then get into our work. So supporting them in that way for mental health. I also have been running with the help of our Mountaineer Mentors, a lunch program. So we meet 4 days a week for about between a half hour and 45 minutes, and the kids get to do crafts, music. Our most recent activity is Jeopardy. Everyone loves Jeopardy. So creating these opportunities for them to socialize outside of class, I think, has also been really important in helping them get through this difficult time.
Very good, very good. And thank you for sharing that with members of the audience. There are schools that are still looking and seeking ideas and strategies to be able to support students during a remote learning, also hybrid situations. So thank you for sharing that with the audience. And one thing that you mentioned is about consistency. And as we all know, children, young adults on this autism spectrum need consistency. Have an opportunity to see their teacher every day, even on a asynchronous day, even for a short time period, is helpful for them. And also the fact of they're used to a routine in terms of the classes that they will have on certain days and throughout the day, but just still having that connection point for them for the different classes has also been beneficial. So thank you for sharing that with the audience. So let's talk now a little bit about professional development. As a special education teacher, what is one professional development experience that has been beneficial and that you would definitely encourage any special education teacher to actually attend?
So I'm drawing a blank on the name right now. I believe it was the New Jersey ABA conference I attended about 2 years ago in Newark. And what I love about it is when you teach students on the autism spectrum, there's really two schools of thought, and they don't always overlap. They actually typically don't overlap. Some schools will, but traditionally they haven't. And this, maybe it was the Perfectum conference. Excuse me, it was the Perfectum conference, and it was there that I met a person that I had seen a person that I worked with at the Rebecca School in New York, and she had moved on and was working side by side with a behavior analyst. And that was when I kind of had this light bulb moment where I realized we can work together. We can do these things. We can combine methodologies and work towards the best interest of our students. So I found it was, I think, a 2-day conference, and it was the most inspirational conference I had been to. I've been trying to get back ever since, but unfortunately, the life has had different plans for us. But the Perfectum conference, and they have so many resources online and webinars online right now. And I just love it, again, because it combines these two schools of thought that traditionally, in my experience, don't usually work together. And you hear from people all over the country and how they're implementing these methodologies in their rooms from grades pre-K to adulthood. So I found that to be incredibly inspiring and motivating, and got me researching and wanted to see how I can do better. So the Perfectum Conference is something I would highly recommend for anyone who works with special needs students.
Very good, very good. Thank you for sharing that with the audience. So let's think now in terms of your time in education, what you have seen. What do you believe is the greatest challenge in education today, and why?
So I'm biased. My world is special ed. So I'm always looking to improve special ed. And I would just say, in education and in the world, finding ways to include our individuals with special needs in the employment world, in general education classes and electives, is something that I think as a society we can continue to work on. And less awareness of disabilities and more acceptance. So, we're all aware at this point in time what autism is. Now it's time for us to accept and understand that these individuals have so many talents and gifts to give the world, and unless they're given the opportunity, we'll never know. So I would say finding a better balance between I like to say, throwing out the label and seeing the person for the person and the abilities and not the disability or what they can't do, but what they can do.
Very good. And I was going to go back to a phrase that you used. You say moving from awareness to acceptance, and really creating those opportunities for them to be more involved in the general ed setting, and also the other settings that are going to prepare them for the future and adult life. So thank you very much for sharing that with the audience. So let's talk a little bit. We're going to shift a little bit. Let's talk about your passion around yoga, and how did that all start and develop, and share a little bit about the work that you do in terms of teaching yoga through Essex and Hudson County.
So I was at a girlfriend's house one morning, and she was going to a hot yoga class. I had maybe done yoga once in my life in college, and she's like, I was up, and she's like, come on, just come with me. So I have to credit her to that, because I don't think I ever would have gotten into it. And if you haven't gathered by now, when I get into something, I get all the way into something and I don't stop. So from there, I went to my first hot yoga class in New York City, where you're like this next to people, everyone's sweating. It really wasn't my scene, but I instantly fell in love with this idea of, you don't have to be running. I'm not a runner. I've never been a runner. And I felt so good afterwards. I had that same feeling after a good, soccer practice or whatever, that you got that the endorphins going. And so from that point on, I started practicing on my own. I was working in Bergen County and I had a long commute, and I found a yoga studio between home and work, and I made it a practice to start going after school. And from there, I found a teacher who really spoke my language. She was very technical and particular, and it wasn't just do this, do that, get in this pose, get in that pose. She told you, turn your feet forward, bend your right knee, keep bending it. And I like that. I need to be told exactly what to do. And so from there, I learned that she was offering a teacher training at a different studio in Montclair. And my girlfriend and I dragged her along this time, and I said, come on. So we did our first 200-hour teacher training together. And it was a big commitment. It was a year-long commitment, and you would dedicate an entire weekend to yoga training. And there were days we loved it, and there were days we hated it. But at the end, it was this great accomplishment. And like I said before, I don't stop. So I kept going, and I did another 300-hour training on my own. My girlfriend's like, I'm done. You can keep going. So I did another 300-hour, and then in my 300-hour, traditionally people are teaching, and I was kind of, ironically, as a teacher, I was scared to teach yoga to adults. It was new for me. I didn't feel confident in it, and so I did 200-hour, 300-hour without really ever teaching adults. I would teach my students, and I would teach the sports teams at the high school, but then came a time and I was feeling stagnant in just the day-to-day life. So I signed up for another 300-hour training. And from there, I started teaching. I would teach again locally. I did a lot of work at jiu-jitsu studios. My brothers both do jiu-jitsu. So, and my dad, he'd be upset if I didn't include him.
Yeah, leave him out.
So I started teaching at gyms. And then I was working with the football team about a year ago. And then an opportunity fell into my lap June 2019. A woman that I had fought with came to me and said there's this opportunity to buy a yoga studio in Hoboken. And I'm always looking for something. I'm always just looking for a new adventure. And so I jumped at the opportunity. And so I had a yoga studio for about a year. And then unfortunately, the pandemic hit, and it just became increasingly more difficult to stay alive when you're paying rent and you're not holding classes. And, online, there's only so much online people want to do. So right now I'm on a bit of a break, and I haven't been teaching yoga. I try and practice, like I said, a little movement every day, but it's really, I truly believe it's helped me be a better person. It's helped me calm myself, because even though I'm like all over the place, having my yoga practice is very grounding for me. And yeah, I mean, I'm so grateful to my friend who brought me to that class, reluctantly dragged me to that class that morning, but it's been great, and my students like it. I try and do it when we're in person. I have yoga mats. My classroom is essentially a yoga studio because all my furniture got moved there from the yoga studio. So we got all the mats you could ever need. But yeah, I find that through my own practice, I'm able to instill some of those things I've learned through all my trainings with my students.
Very good. And one thing that you mentioned and came out very clearly is definitely a lifelong learner. Starting with 200 hours and 300 hours and more hours. Yes, I'll probably be like your friend. I would probably say, keep on going. That's good. That's good. So let's talk about another business venture that you started in 2009, a Special Helper LLC. So just share with the audience about the work that you're doing in that business venture.
So I started that as, I guess, I had just graduated college, and I found this need for babysitters working with kids with special needs. It's not, most parents who have a child with some type of special need can't just hire the girl next door. They really need someone who has a clear understanding and or is willing to learn more about their child's individual differences. And so I started this just through a website, and I gathered anyone and everyone I knew that was in special education, and I was working to match them with families locally. So from that, I met someone who had a in-home, it was like an adult care service, an in-home care service. And so I partnered with them at that point. So I took a special helper and I partnered with this company. And we worked to develop connections in the neighborhood, but it just unfortunately never took off as I had hoped it would. We were competing with care.com and a lot of online sites that have algorithms and the resources to really make this work. And I was working the back end, hand picking and matching everyone. So I stepped away from that for a little while, but that's always kind of at the core of what I have this entrepreneur goals instilled in me still. So while a special helper didn't take off as I had hoped, it doesn't break me down. It actually just makes me go, okay, I'm going to build upon this idea. So I have many ideas that I hope, and my focus has actually shifted now, not so much to like in-home care, but now I really want to help those who are aging out of the education system post 21 and looking for employment. And so that's kind of where my focus has shifted. So a special helper kind of was my baby, and I felt the need for it. But unfortunately, what I found was people don't have the resources always to hire a babysitter, right? We all want the extra help, but the resources aren't always there. So I found that it became a matter of financial need for people. So that's kind of where I don't want to say fell at the wayside, but didn't really take off as I had hoped it would. So,
No.
but
yeah, well, thank you for sharing. How a Special Helper LLC began in 2009. Also, that the work that you set out to do, and for those that are in the audience, you have heard so far in terms of the mindset, the work ethic of Ms. Mallory DeMarco, what she dreams and aspires to do for children of special needs. And there are many parents, there are other people, also other business owner entrepreneurs that are listening to what you're saying at this period of time. And just want you to understand that, yes, you have the idea, but there's people out there that are definitely listening and are going to reach out to you and connect with you to be able to reset and restart a lot of the work that you have started. And I just I'll applaud you for stepping out there and really providing opportunities for children with special needs, the work that you were doing in terms of everyone, in terms of their health, and also in terms of the yoga instruction that you have been doing in Essex and Hudson County, as well in the schools. And on the screen, everyone can see this Mallory DeMarco's website, www.malloryademarco.com. And it's encouraged those that have heard her story this afternoon, reach out to her, and definitely the idea that she has, as well as other ideas that are from those that are in the audience, can definitely come together to make a significant impact for many people. So I just want to encourage everyone to reach out to Ms. Mallory DeMarco. So let's talk a little bit about your recent work, and we always talk about you always advancing yourself. You recently prepared and also passed the board certified behavior analysis examination. That exam, when talking to many who have worked to actually take the exam to be a BCBA, is a challenge. Okay, and what is some words of encouragement or advice that you will share with those aspiring to be a BCBA and also prepare for that exam?
So first I would say, get out of your own head. You can do it. I feel like, similar to what you're saying, the conversation is always, that's a really hard exam. And don't get me wrong, it is very hard. But I also think that people who get this far have prepared themselves in more ways than they probably give them credit for. So trust yourself. Know that you have the knowledge. Don't be frightened by what you hear. I have to credit, if I may plug, Study Notes ABA was a lifesaver for me. I'm a procrastinator, so I do a lot, but because I do a lot, I procrastinate. And I knew myself. Everyone I spoke to said 3 months studying, and I just knew I wouldn't be able to do it because I get very antsy, and then the information just it doesn't sink in anymore. So I got accepted. I had submitted my paperwork, I got accepted, and I set my date for a month and a half after I started studying. And that website that I mentioned is unbelievable. I'm a visual learner, and they made everything visual. The note taking, they were funny, and it made you, as I was sitting there taking the test, I would be able to visualize the pictures I had drawn. And okay, that's where this is. And I will say my other tip that I would recommend that I realized after doing a lot of practice tests is read the question first. Don't even bother reading the beginning. Read the question. What are they asking you? Because a lot of times the ones that I got wrong were just tricky. It was a tricky wording, and I misread the question, or I assumed what the question was asking, and it could have been easily, I could have gotten that correct. I will also say, when you're doing your demo or your practice test, your mock exams, I would sometimes get them wrong because the ones you get wrong are the ones you're going to remember. So if I was between one, I'd be like, I'm just going to guess it. And then when you get it wrong, those are the ones you go back and you really go through with a fine-tooth comb. So give yourself more credit. Definitely study. Know yourself as a test taker. Like I said, I knew myself. Studying for 3 months wasn't going to be for me. So I buckled down a month and a half. I lived this is my desk and my dining room table. And I did the study notes. Any free resources that you can get, go for it. Take a lot of different mock exams because it will give you different perspectives. Everyone writes theirs differently. There are ones, I believe it was Study ABA. They were more realistic to what the test was like, the way the questions were worded. So, and take the full time. I was there for the entire 4 hours. I got through the whole test, took a break, and went back and corrected the ones that I had flagged. So, but you can do it. And I just feel like we have to change this conversation. It is a hard test. But like I said, when you've gotten this far and you've taken the initiative to take the test, you're on the right track. So it's possible.
Very good. Believe in yourself. Go ahead, take the test, and trust everything. So thank you very much for sharing that with the audience. So as we close out this time together, you have shared already so much good information and advice for teachers, parents that have children that are on the spectrum or other special needs. Just want to pose this last question. What is one piece of information or wisdom and advice that you just want to share with the audience? Again, this audience has some students that are listening, some aspiring teachers, current teachers, principals, administrators, superintendents. What is one piece of advice that you would like to leave the audience with this afternoon?
So I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but it's something I feel very passionate about. It's important that you understand your students' diagnoses and what they're diagnosed with. But I like to take that information, educate myself, and then throw it out because I want to know the student. We can read a textbook definition of what autism or Down syndrome or mild cognitive impairments are, but at the end of the day, and I'm sure everyone has heard this, when you've met a person with autism, you've met one person with autism. So there is no one-size-fits-all model. So you need to, in order to educate, help, whether it's your child, throw out the diagnosis and think about your child and don't attribute every behavior or quirkiness to the diagnosis. Focus on their abilities and what they can do and keep pushing them forward. We all have we all have things we're not good at, but we don't focus on those, right? We try and overcome those. We try and push forward. So I just like to think of, yes, educate yourself, have a awareness about what autism may look like or any disability may look like, but then get to know the child, get to know your student, and they're going to be the ones that are your greatest teachers. And keep pushing them along, because if you're not going to push them along, who's going to do it? So keep reaching for the stars, and don't let any label determine your future.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, Ms. Mallory DeMarco, for being on the show today. And thank you for modeling excellence for your school community and also your surrounding community. And for everyone tuning into the show, thank you for joining us this afternoon. Join us next week for another exciting episode with an amazing educator who has done things significantly for themselves, for others, and with others. Have a great afternoon. See you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.